Welcome again, everyone. I want to welcome Michelle to our Sangha. This is Michelle. There's everyone. You'll meet him. Tonight's talk is on the Sallatha Sutta, the Sutta on the two arrows. I think it was Helen, was it you that suggested? Yeah, too bad Vicky's not here. It's a great sutta, but they're all great. We'll meditate first for 20 minutes. So find your relaxed meditative posture. Gently close your eyes and gently close your mouths. And holding your back straight, but not stiff. Your ears aligned with your shoulders, nose aligned with your navel. And holding yourself very loosely, very gently, very lovingly. Allow yourselves to settle into this room. Settle onto your seats. Settle into your bodies. And settle into your minds. And take a moment to become aware of the sensation of breathing in your body. Just get a feel for what that's like. To be mindful of your breath in your body. And while remaining mindful of your breath in your body, notice that thoughts are flowing. We're conscious beings. Thoughts should be flowing. The purpose of meditation is to not be distracted by your own thoughts. So if you find yourself caught up in your thinking again, acknowledge that and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. I'll repeat that. If you find yourself caught up in your thinking again, simply acknowledge that and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. Relaxing your thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. And we'll meditate for 20 minutes with callbacks every 5 minutes. Relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. Relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. Relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. If a persistent thought or feeling arises, stay with it for a moment or two. Recognize it as impermanent and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. And we'll meditate for 5 more minutes. Take a moment to notice the quality of your mind. Be at peace with your mind. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. So I'd like to say a few words about on in the world today, and it relates to tonight's topic too, but I just think things just need to be said about, I'm talking about Harvey and Irma in particular, but in general, it's dukkha, the general disappointing, unsatisfactory, outright suffering that's part of human life. It's just part of it. And that's not to diminish what's occurring. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. What's really remarkable, what's the right way to say this? It's obvious that we still have some ongoing social issues in this country. But I can tell you in my short lifetime, we've come a long way even with the big ones. But what's really remarkable to me is how well we're able to take care of each other. And I mean on a governmental level, with all the problems with the government and all the craziness that's going on right now. The response has been just unbelievable. And we're part of that. It's not, it's not Washington doing this. It's not, they're supported by us. We've created this incredible compassionate system that's going to have an entire electrical grid rebuilt in a matter of a few days to take care of people. We have our military, and I grew up when we were protesting against the military in pretty awful ways. We have a military that's bringing food and water and shelter to people, brothers and sisters. With all the problems we have in our government and in the world, it really is remarkable how well we're able to take care of each other. I know I've said that twice, but that really is the essence of a beginning enlightened people, isn't it? We're able to overcome all our problems and all our differences and all of our greed, all of our competitiveness, and we take care of each other when we need to. And it's not just us. That other countries are now involved. There's France and England and probably all the other well-established countries that can afford it are bringing all kinds of food and water and shelter to the Caribbean. Those things are part of dukkha. When the Buddha awakened, he recognized that all of these things that we have no control over are part of the general suffering of life. It's part of having a human life. Some of us are more fortunate than others. We may get the hurricane next week. Who knows? When the Buddha described the process of awakening, he said that dukkha needs to be understood. We need to understand the personal experience of dukkha, but also the general experience, how these things occur just because we're on this planet. He said that the cause of dukkha should be recognized, should be understood. He said that cessation of dukkha should be, and he said that the Eightfold Path leading to that cessation, leading to that understanding, should be developed. That is how he described his entire teaching. He never taught anything outside of those parameters. Described and awakened under a human being, he said that they understand dukkha in a very profound way. That human being has recognized and abandoned the cause of individual suffering, craving and clinging. And the individual has had the experience of understanding in a very profound way the extinguishing, the cessation of dukkha. That awakened human being has fully developed the Eightfold Path. Again, this is the only thing the Buddha ever taught. It's the only thing he was concerned about. But through that brings a life importantly, of peace and calm that lasts no matter what occurs in the world. So the Sallatha Sutta is a sutta about, specifically about how we contribute to our own suffering. It's a way of understanding the general nature of suffering in the world. And aren't we in a unfortunately fortunate time to really understand that and not contribute more to our own suffering and to others? So for some reason, not for some reason, today I was thinking a lot about the Ratana Sutta. I know I'm not talking about that today, but that was a sutta the Buddha gave to a town that was devastated by floods and the disease that followed from that. And he first took care of the practical needs of the people, and then he taught the Dhamma. And why did he do that? Because he knew that the most loving thing he could do at that time was to teach those folks how to awaken themselves and not stick the second arrow. And that's why I always say the most loving thing I can do for myself and for all other sentient beings is to take to the Dhamma and awaken. Because then I know that at the very least I'm not contributing to the suffering in the world. And hopefully I can have some kind of positive effect, a real positive effect, a real mindful effect on the rest of the world. So, okay, that's enough for my little preaching. Well, there'll probably be some more preaching to follow with this, but the Sallatha Sutta, I'm going to leave out the beginning because I kind of touched on it just now. Understanding the first noble truth means understanding that as a consequence of living in the phenomenal world, there will be stress and unhappiness. There will be suffering. And if you have any questions about this, please just holler out. There's a big class tonight, so let's keep our comments to when we go around. Understanding suffering is understanding that suffering is part of the experience of being alive. Attempting to negate stress is aversion to what is simply present. Creating beliefs of a better life after physical death as compensation for the suffering present in life simply creates more confusion and delusion and arises due to clinging or wanting any experience to be different than it happens to be, including the idea of embracing our suffering because we might get some reward. That's all just part of I-making and conceit. Due to anicca, impermanence, and uncertainty, there is an underlying unsatisfactory nature to human life. There is stress and unhappiness in life. In the Sallatha Sutta, a question is put to the Buddha as to what is a distinguishing factor between a well-instructed and well-informed Dhamma practitioner and those that have no understanding of the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha responds, Buddha's words, friends, an ordinary uninformed person feels feelings of pleasure, feelings of pain, and neutral feelings. One well-informed of the Four Noble Truths also feels feelings of pleasure, feelings of pain, and neutral feelings. When through the sixth sense base, an uninformed person experience a feeling of pain, they are sorrowful, they grieve, they become distraught, and often irate. The uninformed feels two pains, the pain of the experience and the pain caused by the reaction arising from clinging. Is that clear? So the first experience is just life occurring, but wanting something to be different by clinging to a self-referential or even a self-centered view is like sticking in the second arrow. What's occurring, that is the problem that's rooted in I-making. This would be like being hit with an arrow and then, by request, being hit again by an arrow. As a person is experiencing pain, resistance occurs, leading to resistance obsession. And it's such a beautiful line, isn't it?
Leading to resistance of
obsession. So once we've conditioned our minds to resist anything or obsessed with that aversion, don't we? Resistance obsession.
A resistance, I thought you said resistance of obsession.
No, resistance obsession.
Obsession.
It describes what has just occurred. And every time we do that from a lack of restraint, we're continuing that obsession. And we do it with pleasurable things too. Is that clear? And the obsession is not about necessarily pathological obsession. We're just talking about the obsession that arises from maintaining this self-referential ego self, this anatta, maintaining wrong views. As the person experiences pleasure, delight in pleasure occurs, leading to pleasure obsession. The same thing, craving is another word for that. Reaction brings obsession as the uninformed does not discern what is actually present, the origination, the allure, the drawback, or the passing away of the feeling. So again, something happens and it's pleasurable, we want more of it. And we don't understand impermanence at that point, which is the most important point to recognize. Whatever I'm feeling that is so pleasurable is impermanent. Why attach myself to it? And that's the most effective point to practice restraint. Something happens and it really bothers me. And I react to it. I create an obsession about this not having. That's conditioning my mind. Instead of recognizing the impermanence of even that. Recognizing the allure, or recognizing the arising and the passing away of all things. They're all impermanent. No, okay. The first arrow is simply this is my words. The first arrow is simply the stress and unhappiness that occurs in the phenomenal world. The second arrow is the stress and unhappiness caused by ignorance, giving rise to clinging, craving, desire, and aversion. In other words, wanting the people and experiences of life to be different than what occurs compounds the initial pain of an experience. The Buddha continues, sensing pleasure or pain, the uninformed joins with it. How often do we hear that term that we should embrace our pain and embrace our suffering? It's another way of joining with it. The uninformed is joined to birth, aging, sickness, death, and joined with sorrows, grief, pain, and despair. Action to experience the uninformed furthers their confusion and suffering. Again, by joining with it, by identifying with it, by claiming it as mine, by taking anything personally. Now, in my words, now the Buddha teaches a person well informed of the Four Noble Truths and understanding stress and unhappiness, how they respond to the unfolding of dukkha. The Buddha's words, the well-informed person, when stress arises, has no resistance. Simply what's occurring. With no resistance obsession is formed. With no delight in sensual pleasure, no pleasure obsession occurs. The well-informed person discerns what is actually present and understands its origination, its allure, its drawbacks, and its passing away. The whole cycle of what's occurring. Rising one was talking about that brilliantly the last couple of weeks. It's not just what's arising, that's what we're reacting to. Hang around for the passing away and you won't react to it anymore because it's coming. Where was I? They remain disjoined from pleasure and pain. This is a distinction between those uninformed and those well-informed of the Four Noble Truths. It's simply that. It's simply not reacting, not joining with it, not creating an identity, not creating craving or aversion to it. And remember how this relates directly to dependent origination in that sixth part, clinging and maintaining. My words, the Four Noble Truths bring an understanding of life as it is and the cause of furthering stress, unhappiness, and confusion. The Buddha's direct teachings are not salvific, offering the promise of a better life as a reward for proper behavior. The Buddha's direct teachings develop the experience of lasting peace and happiness to this human life. That's so important. It is in this moment, in this life, that we can awaken. In fact, I would say it's in this life that we should awaken. Why not? It's the best time to do it. It's an auspicious time when we hear the Dhamma and actually take to it and develop it. This understanding is a key difference between what the Buddha taught and the beliefs of his time arising from the Vedas and later the Upanishads. And just for clarification, the Upanishads are a rejection of the Vedas, but both developed the notion of a better life after this one as compensation for the suffering in this world. And the Upanishads and the Vedas have really been kind of put together as one teaching now. The Four Noble Truths bring lasting peace and happiness in this present life through the understanding of life in the ever-changing phenomenal world. There will be stress and unhappiness, disenchantment and disappointment. Stress is simply a part of life. By radical acceptance of things as they are, with no passionate desire that the events of life be any different than what occurs, despite impermanence and uncertainty, the mindful experience of life remains stress-free, purposeful, and peaceful. And that last part requires developing the Eightfold Path. And and finally living our life from the point of view of right view, simply understanding what's occurring without the need for it to be any different. So that's the Sallatha Sutta in this talk tonight. So thank you. Any questions directly about the talk and the sutta?
So can I just mention that, so in the beginning, like, and I won't put it exactly right, but recognizing that stress is arising. So there's always talk about, okay, joining with suffering or comprehending suffering or making some big deal out of it. But those words, recognizing when stress is arising, and then the end word was stress-free life. So I understand the links and not identifying with the stress, just recognizing pleasant, unpleasant, and how it occurs. But it's a kind of a funny recognizing stress is arising and you can lead a stress-free life. That's the second arrow.
Well, yeah, we don't forget, by just, and I'm not saying you're doing this, by just saying that, you're taking it out of context. The Buddha is teaching that there's an eightfold path that we develop in order to get to that stress-free life. But the Eightfold Path is a way of developing deep concentration that provides the framework to refine mindfulness to be able to recognize dukkha arising. I mean, we all know that there's stress and suffering in the world. But we look at it from the point of view of a wrong view, and we don't recognize it or see it clearly. In fact, we think it's something, there's all kinds of ways that we are taught to deal with stress, isn't it? But the only successful way that the Buddha taught was an Eightfold Path. We don't join with it, we don't glamorize it, we don't embrace it, we simply understand it. And most importantly, and this is what the Sutta points to, we understand our own contribution to our own suffering because of lacking an understanding of the true nature of the world, lacking an understanding of Four Noble Truths. From ignorance through 12 observable causative links, all manner of suffering arises. We simply don't understand it. So the teachings are to develop wisdom where there was once ignorance. Is that clear? Is it clear, at least in a general way, how the sutta relates to the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path?
Absolutely.
It makes the jump from the first noble truth to the second.
Yeah.
You see the first arrow coming, there's dukkha, and then bang, there comes number two, clearly and greater.
Yep. The origination of dukkha is that. And if we can recognize that, it's great for seeing that. Thank you. If we can recognize it as it occurs, then we cease our contributions to our own suffering and our own confusion and our own delusion. So we'll start with you. Good to see you, Ron.
Good to be here. Nice full class.
Yeah.
Life is good. Meditations have been a little fuzzy, but that seems to come and go. So.
So are you able to recognize your contributions to dukkha?
Yeah, I get in that. It's much easier to see other people's contributions. But you know, if I stay honest, I'll see my own stuff in there.
So many mirrors around.
Yeah. Thank you. Jill, welcome to our Sangha.
Thank you.
I don't know if this is out of context for you or not, but was this talk meaningful for you?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Good. How was your meditation tonight?
Oh, it was very much needed. It was very lovely.
Good. And the method is this similar to what you've been doing?
Yeah, I mostly do Anapanasati and Vipassana, and sometimes I do a visualization, but it's rare that I actually do that one. So yeah, it's similar Anapanasati.
Great. So this again, this meditation method is part of the Eightfold Path. It's not just meditation, but that's what these classes are about too. There's a recording of this on my website, becoming-buddha.com, if you want to use it to guide your own meditation. And there's a lot of information about what we teach and what our Sangha is about here. But welcome to our Sangha. It's nice to have you.
Good to be here.
Greg, good to see you again. How are you?
Good to see you again. Very good.
How was your meditation tonight? And do you have any questions or comments about the talk?
No, meditation was very nice. The talk was very, very good to be reminded of, these things that often, it's good to be reminded repeatedly, again and again. And the only comment was very well. I always like to bring in the very scientific type thinking to, and the one thing that came to mind is, the second arrow, the rumination in suffering and then not recognizing it and just rolling in it. We know now it actually rewires the brain. So you're really damaging recognizing the suffering for what it is and reliving it. You're changing your whole way of thinking. You're creating these habit patterns, and you're physically altering.
Yeah.
It's just not good for yourself, and it's not good for anybody. And it's
yeah. Thank you for saying that. A conditioned mind is not just a mental, psychological process. It's a physical process too. We really do change the physical structure of our brains to support our conditioned thinking. But because we can do it one way, we can do it another way. We can undo that process. Thank you for bringing that up.
Not good for the economic structure, or maybe it is good for the economic structure of our country. Talking about how.
How are you, Matt? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see everybody here. Practice is going well. Keeping consistent, I find that's what the practice is all about.
Yeah.
I love this sutta. It's a great one. And it's taking it out of something that's just a concept and into something that's we do to ourselves every day.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. It is. It's so important to recognize this, and if we can recognize that we are the cause or the contribution, we contribute to our own suffering. Then we can take a direct approach to ending that. If it's something that's happening to us or imposed on us, or that we have no control over, then what can we do? What's the sense? Just suffer. Thank you, Tim. Good to see you.
Good to see you, John. Everybody. It's a wonderful sutta. My meditation is going well. I'm still having issues with a lot of noise, distraction. I'm relatively new at this, so keep doing it. One thing I've been thinking about in the sutta really was interesting that you brought this one up. Is what I've been thinking about is the conditioned thinking, the conditioned brain, and it's almost like a instinctive response that we have for survival, for to get by through life. And so to recognize that and to change that goes to get your instinctive brain is fighting you. It's fighting, or at least me. It's I'll speak for myself. It's fighting me. It's like I'm at war almost. Not war, but battling with the noise, distractions, and what I know is there. That's good. So it was very good. So it really kind of brought to light those things in a very empirical way. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. That survival response is necessary at times. I remember I think it was the first retreat, somebody asked a question kind of related to this and the idea of not self. He says, well, if you're standing on the train tracks and the train's coming at you, what do? And he was kind of implying, do you just stand there? No, you take 2 steps to the left. what has happened is that this anatta, this self-referential ego personality, has overtaken the survival instinct for simple preservation of the body in extreme conditions and use it to preserve itself. And so at times it seems like I'm going to be annihilated if I don't speak my mind or if I don't protect this view. Like Buddha said, it's like foam on the ocean. There's nothing there. There's nothing to protect. Yet it takes over our life at times, doesn't it? We feel like our very survival is at stake if I don't get one more piece of chocolate cake. None of it is based on anything like right view, though. Thank you for bringing that up. Helen, good to see you tonight.
Good to be here as always very reinforcing. So what I was thinking about, well, from what Greg said, is and thinking about how the brain operates, it's that they call it the reptilian part of the brain that causes you to lash out and fight and just act on that fight or flight impulse, or that, basically protecting yourself impulse. And we have control over that. We just have to recognize it. The other thing I was thinking about, and I love this sutta, I find it very useful in my life and in people's lives that I encounter that are clinging to things. The way I see it, something good happens, you enjoy it, you have the appropriate response, and then you let it go. You don't cling to it, that it must always be like that. And the same thing with, so you have the power to do that, to have the appropriate response when it comes, and to allow it to be released when it's over. Yeah. Because that first piece of chocolate is delicious. If you eat the whole box, it's not so good anymore. Yeah. So if you enjoy it for what it is and as it is, and let it go, you're opening yourself up for the opportunity to enjoy that sensation again in the next moment or another moment. Yeah. So you enjoy it as it's there, that's the appropriate response, you let it go. To me, it isn't that you just say, this is happening, this won't happen forever, let it go. You embrace it while it's there with the appropriate response, and then you let it go. And that's also empowering for negative things that come your way, because you can then see, this is what's happening, this is what I need to get through it, it will pass, and you let it go, and you don't cling to it, you don't harbor that thought, that feeling, that reaction, that fear, you just let it go. And that's so empowering. Isn't it? So empowering.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it is empowering. That's where all the power is, because we're present now. Mm-hmm. We're present with the arising and passing away of all things, good, bad, and different. Doesn't matter. But if we can be present with whatever's occurring, then life is meaningful, and that's the only way it can be meaningful. And then the most subtle and insignificant aspect of life becomes meaningful. Another way of saying that, then at that point we really don't miss anything, because we're able to be here.
I share the breath with the moment.
Yeah. Thank you, Helen. Nash, good to see you tonight. How are you?
Thank you. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thank you for asking.
So one of the first things that really resonated with me, the very first class I came to was the metaphor of the second arrow.
Was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so hearing the sutta about it was great.
Yeah.
Very good sutta.
Isn't it? Yeah.
My practice is going okay. I have a hard time some mornings. That's nothing new. I'm just trying my best. Nothing really else to add.
Great. I'm so glad you're here. Has anybody else ever had difficulty getting into a meditation practice?
Welcome to the club.
I'm glad you're here. Isabel, good to see you.
I mean, it's
so beautiful how in every class I can say or feel that like I just resonate with every sutta that I like whether it's something that happened over the past few days or in the past week, and I think that's the beautiful thing about the teachings.
Yeah.
It's like I'm always going to be able to resonate, and it's always going to just, I don't know, this light bulb every time it's going off, and like for this being helping this, it's just, I don't know, it's beautiful, and the light bulb that kind of went on today is just the idea of recognizing. Like I guess I've been struggling with understand the idea of clinging and craving, but I was like clinging to this like how it's like what it's not what it means, but how suffering comes into my life and how by embracing like what you said, the idea of embracing my suffering, I was realizing that it's not about that I need to be recognizing it, and that like there's something about that word just like shifted my consciousness, like the idea that it is recognizing, and that kind of added to like the puzzle that is.
Yeah.
This is really great.
I agree. I think it's really great too. The greatness comes from the utter practicality of these teachings too. Again, there's nothing mystical or esoteric about it. Everything the Buddha taught and everything I hope I teach here is practically applied in our lives as we develop it. You know, and the light does keep going off. So I'm glad you're here tonight. Maura, good to see you. How are you?
Good. I was trying to work with my resistance obsession as the cold air was coming.
How'd you do?
I did good.
Good.
I was just like, yeah, recognizing this is unpleasant. It was. My feet were cold. I don't have a lot of circulation down there. So that's all right. It was just a shit. You know, so I had two thoughts on, I have a lot more than two thoughts, but so my meditation tonight was extremely quiet and spacious. It was really lovely. I mean, that's just was tonight's experience. I was great effort, was rolling through very well. And I heard in meditation somebody laugh. Well, there was a sound. Ha! And that, like, and I had that momentary awareness of the fact that, because I was kind of like half thinking and not thinking about just the sounds and sensations, are they occurring inside or outside? Right? And I was kind of a little just playing around with that, but I heard the ha, and I realized that it's so funny how we just a sound to all this meaning, you know, oh, somebody laughing, and should be laughing now, they shouldn't be laughing now, it's good.
There's
you know, whatever we want, yeah, I know, like that's, you know, and I was all this, but you know, I didn't go into all that until like after, I mean, really, because I was doing right after, like I had it come up, and it's just, it was pronounced, and a recognition of how we attach meaning and stuff to these sounds that come in. And then I was thinking about it when we were talking. Interesting the mind is, that's all, you know, to see it as just as it is.
Yep.
That the context is going to change. I mean, it's going to determine whether that sound is a pleasant sound, unpleasant sound, under the context, the conditions, blah, blah, blah. They're going to color how you experience it, your previous, you know, karma with laughter. So that was just a little thing, but then in terms of like second arrow and arising and passing and recognizing stress as it comes up, then again, like just still really trying to ratchet up my daily practice, not aside from my meditation practice, my mindfulness practice during the day, and really watching cravings and resistances as they arise, as they pass away, really, like that's been like a big interest of mine, just feeling like sensations in the body, like particularly hunger. I had a really bad hunger on the way over here though. But like, and just watching what happens if, like observing it passing away. If I don't act on it, if I don't identify with it, and if I don't misinterpret it, it's a sensation that's coming up. So that's been really, it's been very empowering, right? I mean, it really is. It's like, you know, it's just really, really cool. Like, I just feel very free this week. I do. Like,
Hold on to that.
I feel exhausted. It's just, I feel very confident. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Good for you. Did somebody actually laugh during
I
meditation?
just came
I'm
from
sorry.
over here.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear it.
Yeah, it was very pronounced, right? I mean, it wasn't annoying. It was just, oh, that's interpretation.
Yeah. And it was entirely appropriate. It was just as it should be. In fact, I would say it couldn't be any different, could it?
Of course not.
Mary, good to see you.
Good to see you, John. As always, this is a perfect sutta. Where my head's at. It just makes so much sense. It's so helpful. What Isabel was saying about, I think you were saying about recognizing it and just being aware of it, and then you can recognize where it's happening at the sixth sense base. And, there's still how far you feel like you're getting in the practice. There's stuff that comes up that brings up old mental fabrications or dusts off or sheds a flashlight on and you're like, oh, you're still here. And then you realize, the stone is kicked across the pond and you're in this reaction before you had a chance to even stop it. So I've had an opportunity to practice that. And it's so helpful to help me rewind and recognize where I could have not reacted or, stop something at the sixth sense base and recognize it for what it was, impermanent. Still practicing that muscle. And the other thing I really enjoyed about tonight was the resistance obsession. I think that's something I'll probably circle back on just to look a little bit more at that. I think there's, like many words that are, black, white, yin, yang, whatever, resistance obsession kind of falls into that, the things you're resisting or avoiding or averse to, or, all those things in there. If I'm understanding that correctly, but I think I'll read up on that a little more. My practice is going very well. My husband is also practicing.
Wow.
They're like in the evening, usually he'll go to his favorite spot to sit and I'll go to mine and then we'll talk about it. And
That's great.
It's a wonderful thing to share with someone else. So I'm really very grateful that enriches my life and my practice and everything. So it's really, and he's really quite devoted. He's, streams all your stress, so you'll meet him eventually. But, it's wonderful. So that has made my practice better, not just in the quality of my practice, but right effort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's
Wow.
a little more disciplined than I am, so. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorbet to follow.
Thank you.
That's good, thank you.
Thank you. And David, if you're listening, hello. Bonnie, good to see you.
Great to see you, teacher. And I think this sutta is sort of for me, it's like kind of begins to define the framework because it's the first thing. We can't stop the second hour if we can't even see the first hour.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that first view is so important, sort of the witness to see that. So and hearing, it's like putting the effort into really hearing yourself. And so while you're doing it, you have to kind of stand back a little and wrestle with how is this going to be and what's in its place. So stillness, I guess. Correct.
Thank you. It takes a measure of concentration and a right view to see the first arrow, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah, it's just another way of saying it. Understanding suffering. Yeah, courage too. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Courage.
I'm good.
Liz.
I'm good. Everything's fine. I'm good.
I didn't think I would ever fall back into the Wizard of Oz. Conditioned thinking. Liz, how are you tonight?
I'm good. This is good. I think one of the most important things while we're learning to see the first arrow, while we're still feeling the second arrow, is the idea of being kind to yourself. And this is the sutta that brings that out the most. And you know, I heard people talking about you know, the conflict of quieting the mind and then just being able to say to yourself, okay, this is today, this is now. I'm just going to right effort, sit with my meditation, and it may continue throughout my meditation, but to just be kind and gentle with yourself, I think, is so key. When you're first starting, when you're in the middle, when you're approaching enlightenment, I mean, you just have to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
And recognize that if you do take the second arrow, and you've been working so hard not to, that, you know, it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah, there's always third arrows and fourth arrows. Careful, so.
Adding to the arrow collection.
Yeah.
Stephen is the martyr who had all the small blades.
Yeah.
You know, he's leaning up against a tree.
Yeah.
I do think about that sometimes when the arrows are Robin Hood. You know. Anyway, that's all I have.
The Dhamma is a little bit like the Wild West at times.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz. Laura, good to see you tonight. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
I'm generally speaking, I'm quite a well person, but last week I was not so good, and I really had to cut myself a break on the meditation. It really surprised me how illness, just your concentration, just you don't have any. When you're really ill, it really cuts into your concentration. And so I learned that last week. I hadn't really appreciated that before, but you know, to be well, you need to be well to concentrate. So I sort of learned that lesson last week. And then in Matt's class, we got talking about anatta, and Matt just gave a phenomenal overview of how by using our eyes and ears and our senses, we attach things to ourselves in an anatta sort of way. But he first said that we have a lot of bodily functions going on, which we don't need to process, think about, they're just going on. And he just took that into our five senses, that just because we're seeing, just because we're hearing, just because we're touching, they're working, it doesn't mean to say that you become attached to things. And it just flowed from, not if Matt can sort of just explain it again. I mean, it was just like, oh my Lord, it's so, you know, it was so simple. And from, as I say, your bodily functions on the inside, and your hearing and your sight and everything are just more bodily functions that we grasp the world, you know, we grasp the world to hearing and sound and taste and stuff. And really it's just a bodily function that's just going on, just like your heart's beating, you know, you're developing, you know, poop inside you all the time and all that, whatever, all your bodily functions are just going on all the time. and your five senses are just an extension of that. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh, I've seen that before. Anyway, I don't know if Matt can. And then just whilst I've been sitting here, I was thinking about anatta again. Thing at the moment, and I thought about, you know, when we feel when we sit down and eat a meal, you know, how we get attached to first off, for instance. And I thought, you know, back on the process, we really get a cart from the supermarket. We're going to the supermarket, and we, you know, if we're getting our breakfast, for instance, we're getting cereal and milk or something like that. We have no personal identity to the carton of milk, the box of cereal. Whilst we're still outside the store, we haven't seen it, we haven't tasted it, we have no personal identity to it. We just have a notion in our head, it's just a thought, we need to buy it. And yet, we buy it, we take it, you know, put it down in our cart, so it becomes ours then. You know, it's our my shopping. And you go through the process, check out, put it in the grocery cart, take it home, put it in the fridge.
Somebody else.
Cereal goes in the cupboard or whatever, and then the morning comes, you take it out, and then by this time it's my breakfast. But I'm totally thinking about it differently than as I started the process, when it was just when I was outside the store and I had this vague idea. I just wanted milk and some cereal, and I wasn't attached to it in that sense. And I just thought, since I've been sitting there, I thought through that process. Isn't it ridiculous?
Well, yes, but it's remarkable that you see how you went from having no milk, no cereal, to it's your milk and your cereal.
Yes.
When it's still just milk and cereal.
It's just a carton of milk and just a box of cereal.
Yeah.
But in the process of seeing it, touching it, smelling it, feeling it, tasting it, it becomes, you know, you. And I just thought of that process just then. That is anatta working full throttle.
Yeah. Through identifying with an impersonal object.
Yeah.
This is me, this is mine.
And I've been thinking about, recently I've been thinking about, you know, interpreting life through our five senses. And that process, you know, just, and I just sort of, that came to mind, just sort of been sitting in that process of just going out shopping, you know, everyday task.
Yeah.
You just completely whip it up all the wrong way.
Well, recognition is the beginning of the process, and that's just what you're doing. Thank you. And that really was brilliant what Matt was talking about. It is all just an impersonal process, except we make seeing something personal when it is no more personal than just heart pumping blood.
Yeah.
Just another process.
That's all it is. It's just another bodily function.
Yeah.
It also brings up so much compassion, though, like, because it happens so quick on that's such a mundane level. And there's all these experiments, like if you give somebody something just to touch, they begin to already identify and rate it at a higher level and such. So, you know, all those sense objects are occurring. So, like, in terms of practicing, and I can, you know, like, I'm so not like there, you know, so like how could we feel any differently towards anybody else? You know, really, it's so compassion, and I find so much, like, more and more that where I recognize that I actually don't have compassion for something, you know, and I think somebody should be doing better. You know, and I'm like, where did that come from? You know, I know where that came from. You know, it's me telling myself I should be doing better, or my mother told me I should be doing better. You know, and I'm like, so just like feeling a lot of compassion for you know, recognizing where you're at, and just like people just need such a break.
So do we.
to
Yeah,
ourselves.
yeah, right, we all need such a break. Taking responsibility, of course.
We really can't be gentle with others until we learn to be gentle with ourselves. It really starts here. What a great sutta. You know, I don't have any control over hurricanes or earthquakes or the last piece of chocolate cake going to someone else or mean drivers or anything. I don't have any control over that. The only control that I have is over my own mind and my reaction or response to life as life occurs. And if I develop the Eightfold Path, and it's not all that tough, it's a challenge at times, then I can gain control. As the Buddha says in the Vitakka Sutta, I'll gain the ability to think what I want to think when I want to think it. And at that point, the natural human compassion comes out, and it's authentic. It's not driven by any type of engaged Buddhism or any ideology. It's just being present in the world. We're naturally loving and compassionate. Some of us are so caught up in those wrong views that it's hard to express it at times. What's going on in the world right now in these great crises really shows what's underlying us all. We want to take care of each other. Sometimes we forget how to do that. Thank you all for a great class. Well, any other questions or comments about tonight's class or the sutta? Okay, we'll finish with the Metta Sutta. So find your relaxed meditative posture. Oh, this one, the retreat's coming up October 19th. If you still owe for your room and you're going to pay by check 2 weeks before would be best. If it's cash a week before. The only reason I'm saying that is I made a deal with Juan Dharma Center that they're giving us a little bit of a discount if I pay a good portion of it in cash. So I got to go up there with a big wad of cash in my pocket. And an armed escort, maybe you. So we'll finish with Metta as we always do. So find your relaxed meditative posture. Gently close your eyes and gently close your mouths. And again, take a moment to become mindful of the sensation of breathing in your body and let that mindfulness of your breath cease any distracting thoughts to the past or to the future or that may have arisen from our talk today. And metta means goodwill or loving kindness, and these are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, must be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abidings. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class. Peace.
Peace.